told them, Lady Grantham?
She's told us nothing.
Do sit down. I've come into possession of a villa in the south of France.
What villa?
Start at the beginning.
Years ago, before you were born, I met a man.
They spend a few days together and he gives her a house.
You never thought to turn it down?
Do I look as if I'd turned down a villa in the south of France?
A telephone call for you, my lord.
Mr. Barber is a producer and director.
He wants to make a film at Downton.
A moving picture at Downton.
But the big film stars, famous ones.
I think it's a horrible idea. Actresses plastered in makeup and actors just plastered.
There is something about it, like a wild animal ready to spring.
Ready to spring on you, you mean?
Cut!
Sorry.
The modern world comes to Downton.
Why do you think he gave you the villa?
That is where the mystery resides.
Then we're off to the Riviera. And with any luck, we'd miss the whole of Mary's frightful film.
I do hope that was a prop.
You steer ahead. You're the captain now.
They better be warned. The British are coming.
Welcome to the Villa of the Doves.
It's a beautiful place.
How happy you must be.
Oh, my goodness.
Who is she?
The Lady Grantham I first went to work for.
Granny.
Why did you invite us here?
It doesn't look good from afar. She felt the need to keep it a secret.
There's trouble in paradise.
You don't need me to tell you that marriage is a novel, full of plot twists along the way.
Women like us fall into two categories, dragons and fools. You must make sure they think of you as a dragon. With that, I will say good night and leave you to discuss my mysterious past.
It seems the public only want films that talk.
I should have thought the best thing about films is that you can't hear them. Be even better if you couldn't see them either.
Okay, hey. It's great to be with you today as we continue God on Film. And so I want to start us off with a question. The question is this. How do you choose a movie to watch? Because let's face it, there's a lot of movies that are out there, whether they're at the theater or whether you're streaming them. And, there's lots of choices, and we only have so much time and so much money and such. And so what's the criteria that you use for selecting the new movie that you watch? Now, is it the A-list actors? You've got to have some A-list actors, the Clooneys, the DiCaprios, the Jennifer Lawrences, they got to be in that. Or for you, would it have to be intriguing plot twists? These really complicated movies like those Christopher Nolan, Inception, Tenet movies, that you just never know exactly quite what's going on. Or maybe for you, it's the stunning special effects. You got to have some CGI, right? I mean, you can do just about everything with CGI. Now, Downton Abbey, A New Era, contains none of those things. So why is the Downton Abbey franchise so beloved? Why is it such a raising success? See, as it began in 2010, it went for 6 seasons. It became the most watched series ever on the British television network ITV, and the most watched series ever here in the United States on PBS. And along the way, Golden Globes, Emmys, a feature-length film, and now this one. So some people credit its success to how it captures history. There must be enough people, that loved history when they were a kid that really appreciate Downton Abbey as it captivates this way to learn about history and, different things in history at that time, like the sinking of the Titanic, the Irish War of Independence, the outbreak of World War I, and the Spanish flu pandemic. But, come on, there can't be enough history people to explain that, can there? And so I think there's another reason, a reason that pulled me in when I watched the film, that for me made the film really powerful and compelling. Is that when we really boil it down is that Downton Abbey is the story about a family. And I got a family. And I bet that you've got one too. And so when I saw this family, the Crawley family, living in the Yorkshire country estate, this mansion, Downton Abbey, with a mom and a dad and brothers and sisters and grandchildren and a granny and some servants. Well, I can't really relate to the servant part. But I watched this movie not really minding the plot so much. That there's actually not really that much of a plot. But what I really focused on was the family and the defining moments of this family. And so I want you to think with me for a moment about that, about your family moments. The ones that perhaps have happened or the ones that are have yet to happen, because in Downton Abbey, the moments in this film are our moments as well. See, there's a wedding, and it's a beautiful thing. This wedding in Downton Abbey, and perhaps you're thinking right now, if you're married, about your wedding day years ago. Or perhaps you're wanting to be married and you're thinking about maybe what that day might look like when you stand before that special person and make your vows to them. And then there's a family trip. There's a vacation going on. First class vacation to the French Riviera. How's about that, posted on Airbnb? What would that have cost? But isn't it true that one of perhaps your best family memories is when, mom and dad, put you all in the car, and drove you off to that family vacation that you'd never forget. And then there's this other family moment. There's a baby being born, a baby coming into the world. And so parents, maybe you can think back now to what that was like, to that moment, in the hospital, or perhaps when you brought that child home, or maybe you're thinking about starting a family, or you're desiring to do so one day, and thinking about what that's going to be like, a defining family moment. And then there's a funeral. There's a funeral, a family member dies. Now, that's something that we look forward to, of course, but let's just be honest, is that these funerals that we have, these family funerals, everybody comes out for them, right? You've got relatives that you never knew you had, that come to a family funeral just to observe and to honor the person that has passed away, that family member. So now a movie like this, I think, draws us in because, let's face it, is that some of our greatest joys come from family, and also some of our greatest pains as well. And so it's pretty simple, is that Downton Abbey is a drama about a family. It's full of family drama. We know about family drama, don't we? We know what that's like. All of us have to navigate some form of family drama, don't we? But did you know is that Jesus had to navigate some as well? So if you've been around Terranova much at all, is that you know that we like to talk about Jesus, to get to know him. And early this year, we did a series called You're Not Far, and it was a series out of the Gospel of Mark's story of Jesus' life. And we spent a really good part of the winter into the spring really looking at Jesus through Mark's story. And as we did that, is that we find that as Mark's story unfolds in Jesus' life, is that we see Jesus begin his ministry doing some things that were extraordinary and also sometimes unsettling, doing things like casting out demons and healing people miraculously and gathering a huge crowd to himself. And you'd think that when that was going on, is that his family would be really excited about that. You think they'd be kind of proud of him. But instead, we find that they're a little rattled by it all. They're a little nervous about it. They're thinking, our Jesus healing on the Sabbath? Oh man, that can't be good. Our Jesus gathering a huge crowd to himself? Well, we've seen some of the people that he brings home. There's some unsavory characters, sinners we like to call them. So understand, this confusion comes to a head in Mark chapter 3. Mark records it when Jesus enters a house in verse 20. It says, and he entered a house, and again, a crowd gathered so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. Talk about house party, right? There's pandemonium going on inside those walls, and his family knows it. So when his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, he is out of his mind. All right, you can think with me maybe about a time that you received some words of affirmation from a family member. And maybe also sometimes that you received some words from a family member that stung a little bit? The going out of his mind part would have stung a little bit, right? It would have stung just a little bit, maybe a little bit hurtful. And so we move through the chapter, and then we get to this place where the family decides to actually do something about it and take charge of him. Back in verse 31, as the family arrives at the house, they arrive there, and standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, "Your mother and brothers are outside looking for you." "Who are my mother and brothers?" he asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, "Here are my mother and my brothers." And so at this moment, Jesus introduces a new community. He says of his disciples that they are now his true family, his true community. Later on is that he would call his ecclesia. That is a Greek word for where we get the English word church. His ecclesia. And this family then that he is forming would in time be this place where everyone's invited and everyone's included and everyone belongs. And furthermore is that he would say of this family that nothing could overcome it, not even the gates of hell. And this was a family that Jesus was forming that had a purpose. This family would be empowered and entrusted to bring Jesus' kingdom of love to save the world, to unmess everything that's messed up with the world. And that's what the community of Jesus followers is all about. This is church at its best. But here's the problem. The church is not always at its best. And we know this, right? I mean, we know this from history, and then we also know this from personal experience. There are times at Terra Nova, many times, where people have come our way, and they come with what we call a bad church experience, like a BCE, bad church experience. They tell us about it. And they share their story, and then towards the end, it usually goes like this. They say, "Yeah, so I'm trying this out again. I'm hoping it's going to turn out better." Man, we hope so too. But here's what I've been thinking about this week. I've been thinking about that we live in a moment where the church must be at its best, needs to be at its best, because there's so much broken stuff in our world, isn't there? So much messed up stuff. I mean, think about the world and all the messed up stuff over the last 2 years, or over the last 2 months, or over the last 2 weeks. I mean, stuff that makes you want to scream and stuff that makes you want to cry. The solution. Oh man, everybody's got solutions, right? But here's Jesus' solution back in Mark chapter 3. "Behold, here are my mother and my brothers. Here's my family. Here's my community. They are here to be the redemptive, healing presence in the world." But in order for this family to unmess this messed up world, to bring God's kingdom of love here today to South Orange County and around the globe, is that we need to be at our best. But where do you even start? Well, we might start here. Maybe you've heard people say from time to time, "Hey, you know what? I'm just seeking to be the best version of myself." Have you ever heard somebody say that? I want us to go ahead and just to kind of work this through in a together sort of way and change it and say, how about we're seeking to become the best version of us? And the scriptures lead us into that best version. And actually there's a thread that runs through the New Testament, is that how we can become the best version of ourselves. Not a church community that's caught up in family drama, but one that's healthy and whole and compelling, that doesn't shut people out, instead it draws people in. And so this thread that I'm talking about, they're known as the one another's in the New Testament. There's about 32 of them. We're going to look at 6 of them today. And for sure is that as we look at these, is that I think that you're going to connect maybe with your biological family and say, "Man, if I do those things, I bet my family life would be better." Or maybe you will be thinking about these things that we're going to look at in the context of the place that you work, the place that you go to school, or the sports team that your kids are on, and just saying, if we could bring these into that group, that would make things better. But understand here that the context is that these are words of instruction that are given to followers of Jesus about how they're to do life together, living in these various cities that were scattered throughout the Mediterranean world at the time. They were given to Jesus' community to help them be their best. And who doesn't want to be their best selves? Who doesn't want that? So these one another's we're going to take a look at, there are 6 of them were written by a guy named Paul. Sometimes he's known as St. Paul or the Apostle Paul. Perhaps you've heard about him. And he had a connection with all these places, these various places that he writes to, because he'd been there. See, it was Paul's practice and custom to go around the known world at that time and to share the good news that God has broken through the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. And that he began, as people began to believe, to set up these little communities of Christ's followers. He would set them up and coach them up and kind of get them going, and then he'd kind of move to the next town. But then in time, as we find that he wrote letters back to some of these places to be able to instruct them and coach them and help them. And so here we are. That's much in the New Testament are these letters that Paul wrote. And so what we want to do is examine some of the things that Paul had to say and get some clear guidance on how to be the best version of us. And so let's go ahead and start off with this first one. See, the best version of us, it happens when we accept one another. Paul writes to the church in Rome and he says, accept one another then as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God. Now, we know what acceptance means, don't we? I mean, acceptance means to love people no matter who they are, where they are, or what they've done. And it means to love people no matter what, which we're really great at so long as they agree with everything we agree on, okay? I mean, isn't that true? I mean, you know, it's so long, we'll be cool with them so long as they believe everything that we believe about the government and about the media and about public schools and climate change and vaccines and masks and the police and censorship and immigration and the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. If they can sign off on the things that we believe, then our doors are wide open for them. And that's not what Jesus is talking about. Well, that's not what Paul's talking about. But actually, Paul's talking about is that we're to accept one another in the same way that Christ accepted you, accepted us. And how did he accept us? As we are, with no strings attached, with all of our faulty worldviews, all of our faulty belief systems. Jesus accepted us. And now he's saying you need to accept others in the same way. And so let's give acceptance a voice in our community. See, acceptance says, Jesus loves you, and so do I. Pure and simple. All right, so acceptance, like that's the first one. It's like, ooh, wow, man, this is kind of a tough one, right? Okay, so in order for us to pull off the first one, we're going to need the second one. The second one, and it goes like this, is that the best version of us happens when we're kind to one another. Paul tells the Ephesians, these believers living in Ephesus, he says to be kind to one another, kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. Now, has it seemed like in the last few years that there's been like an uptick in how unkind people are to each other? Have you seen that? It's kind of disturbing, isn't it? Even more disturbing is when I feel my heart kind of gravitated towards that, you know, kind of what we call jerky behavior, you know, like being a real jerk. It just seems like being a real jerk is just kind of like what people do, you know, and so it's real easy to follow along, real easy to be mad at people, really easy to be mean at people. And so I've been finding my heart kind of moving in that direction, kind of getting hard and crusty in that way. And when it does, it's one of the things that God has used is something that's in the scriptures in Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. And it's kind of a famous thing. It's called the golden rule. And it's where Jesus says, he says, treat people the way you want to be treated. It's really simple, but it's genius. So they're in those moments, you know, where I just want to like, you know, get in touch with my inner jerk and really be sarcastic and mean and snarky and just really bad to the people that are around me. Is that it's a great way that I check myself and say, wait a minute, would I want to be treated that way? No. I'd want someone to have a soft touch with me. I'd want someone to be kind to me. You see, we need to bring kindness into the equation, and here we have the scriptures that are telling us that this is the way that we become the best version of us by showing extraordinary kindness to each other. Not just average kindness, but extraordinary God-empowered kindness. And so let's give kindness a voice in our community. See, kindness says, I will treat you the way I want to be treated. Let's just go ahead and trust that God's going to help us this week. In that moment, when we think that we're going to, just explode and just, ready to dig in, our claws to someone, that we'll just go ahead and decide that we're going to treat people the way that we would like to be treated in that situation. All right, let's go on to the next one. The next one, we just need to recognize that the best version of us happens when we serve one another. When we serve one another. Paul writes to the followers of Christ in Galatia, and he says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the sinful nature. Rather, serve one another in love. So we know what serving's all about, don't we? Service is all about. It's just practically finding ways to help others, isn't it? And I got to tell you that at Terra Nova, this is certainly where we're at our best. I think that as our church, if there's a superpower, this is our superpower. It's just people that come together to just love to serve. People that come and into our community, not wanting to be a consumer but a contributor. And even as we come on the weekends, the people that are coming, and we're coming to enjoy friendships and great music and hopefully some good teaching and all of those things that are very compelling to us, but also at the same time come seeking how they can serve others and be a part of making this whole thing happen. And then just beyond our gatherings, just everything that we do, stuff that we do together, like last month, kids feeding kids out in our parking lot, hundreds of us packing meals to go to Zambia, or like last weekend, our serve day at the Abbey, where we're up at the Orange County Rescue Mission's property, helping to get that ready for hundreds of people that live in their cars and outside. We'll have a place for them to call home. And then this weekend, or this coming weekend, Father's Day weekend, so we've got a whole crew that's going to the Orange County Rescue Mission to serve dinner and to cook dinner, and on it goes. This is just what we do. We meet practical needs within the community. And simply, you know what it is? You know what serving is? Serving one another is just simply living for others. It's simply leading an other-directed life rather than a self-centered life. And community, family, church at its best happens when people serve one another. And so let's give service a voice in our community, because you see, service says, I'm happy to do this for you. It's not a drag, it's not a bummer. I'm actually happy to be able to live this life for you and to serve you. All right, let's go on to the next one. The next one is the best version of us happens when we encourage one another. Paul writes to the church in Thessalonica, and he says, encourage one another and build each other up just as you also are doing. Now encouragement here is the Greek word. It's the word parakaleo. It's used about 109 times in the New Testament. And Paul actually defines it. It's defined this way: build each other up. That's what encouragement is. It's building each other up. And that's in contrast to the spirit of the day, which is criticism, right? And tearing people down. I mean, that's like, it's become almost like a professional occupation, for us to be torn down. And that's just how people roll, is just tearing each other down. And, we've all been on the business end of criticism, right? And that torn down thing. We've all been there. And it's this natural drift, the sting of criticism, man, it hurts, but a compliment. I mean, you know how we respond when we get encouraged with a compliment. I mean, we savor it. We turn it over and over again in our minds until it's burned into our long-term memory. In short, we treat compliments like your dog treats those rib bones that you brought home from Lucille, right? And that's how it works. So we want to give a voice to encouragement in our community. And you see, encouragement says, I will build up and not tear down. I will choose to do that. Now this next one is like encouragement. This best version of us happens when we honor one another. Honor one another. Paul, again, is writing to the church in Rome, and he says to honor one another above yourselves. Honor one another above yourselves. And you know what this is all about. This is all about how we speak well of people when they're not around. That's very honoring, right? Now, if encouragement is speaking well to people, honoring is speaking about people well, right? And that's what we do there. And it also deals with paying compliments in front of others, right? Paying compliments to them. And it also is all about enjoying the successes of others as we honor them for that. And so you know why we're talking about this, don't you? It's because sometimes we get in a place where we're all sweetness face to face, but we're snarky when we get in private when it comes to people. But what we want to do is we want to give honor a voice in our community. You see, honor says, I will publicly celebrate all that you are and all that you do. Then this next one, number 6. The best version of us is when we bear with one another. Paul writes to the followers of Jesus in Colossae, and he says, bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. To bear with. So you know what that means? It means to have staying power in relationships. It means that we hold up with people and we go the long road with them. And it's tough to hang in there with people sometimes. I think that's why Paul's sharing this with the Romans. Because we know that in this community and in a family of God, it's like any other family. It's like a natural family, a biological family. Is that in any family there's going to be some crazy uncles, right? I mean, you know some, all right? Some crazy uncles that are out there, and that person that's in the family and is just like, yeah, they're kind of weird. But bearing with means being patient with them and to put up with their idiosyncrasies. You see, bearing with says this, you'll love this, your weirdness will not push me away. It won't push me away. Now, if you add all these things up, if you add them all up, this leads us to one another, not given to us by Paul, but a one another given to us by Jesus. You see, in John chapter 13, verse 34, Jesus said this. He said, the new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And then he says this. He says, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. He says they'll know. He says they'll know you're mine. They'll know you're a part of my community. They'll know you're a part of my family. There's that family resemblance. It's like, oh yeah, you're just a chip off the old block. There's incredible family resemblance because you look like Jesus and you act like Jesus and you talk like Jesus because you've been with Jesus. You've been with him. And as people did back in the early first century, well, once upon a time, the world began to change because they did this. The world began to change for the better. Things got better because you see, once upon a time, the followers of Jesus did these things during a time that was very dark and broken, a very broken time in history. It was the first century Roman Empire, and it was a time marked by brutal violence, first of all. It was often even used for entertainment. It was a time that was marked by loveless marriages and sexual immorality. And it was also marked by slavery. It was estimated, scholars estimate that clearly half of the Roman Empire at the time were slaves. And it was marked by the exposure of children who were unwanted because they were deformed or because they were girls. Babies left to die out in the streets or on trash heaps after they were born. And it was also marked by poverty. The way that things worked back then is that people just worked themselves to death to provide a very meager existence. And all of this was normal. All of this was the norm. And once upon a time, a small community were the disruptors of the norm because they committed to being the best version of themselves by accepting one another and being kind to one another and serving one another and encouraging one another and honoring one another and bearing with one another and loving one another. that's what they did. And it changed the world. And so that was then back in the first century. But let's go ahead and bring this into our present moment. So what I'd like for us to do is just to take a moment and to maybe pick one of these off the list that you feel like, out of all these ones, and there's 7 of them here, is that this is the one that's for me. This is the one that I know that God is speaking to me about. It's the one that I need to grow in. And as you think about that, as you try to pick one, I just needed to tell you, hey, if you're, like not a God, Bible, or Jesus person, somebody invited you to get some movie tickets, you came and you're like, hey, so what's this all about? And I got to do this. And I just need to let you know is that, something, what I just shared with you is that this is like completely optional for you, okay? It's, you are under no compulsion to do any of this stuff. You see, these are for followers of Jesus. These are for his family. But wouldn't you agree with me is that if you just began to do these, that your life would get better? Around Terra Nova is that we're always saying is Jesus will make you better at living and will make your life better. He'll do those things. And so wherever you're at on your spiritual journey, can you pick one? And then can you identify that and say, this is the one that I would like to grow in? And then as you do, though, we just got to take a look at a list like this, and we just need to understand is that this list is not a, hey, just get better list. Hey, you just need to be better at this. This list is not a just try harder list. Well, here are the things, just try harder. Because we know how hard it is to love people well. We know that's hard work. And so we will need help. We will need God's help. I don't believe that I can do any of this by myself with my own goodness under my own power. Is that we will need the power of God in our lives to pull this off. We will need the life of God in our life if we're to realize this. And so the good news is that can actually happen. Is that God is here. God's help is on the way for us, and that we're reminded of God's presence to move us into this best version of us through what we're going to do right now that some church traditions call the Eucharist, or others call the Lord's Supper, but we call communion. And so we're going to have a time of communion together. I'd like the band to come join me on the stage as we get ready to have this time together. And then as we do, just understand is that what we're about to do is observing a night. It was before Jesus hung on the cross that he was with his community, he was with his family, he was with his ecclesia, and then he took bread and broke it, and Jesus said, "This bread is my body, eat it in remembrance of me." And then he took a cup of wine, and he said, "This cup is my blood, the blood of the new covenant. Drink it in remembrance of me." Now, Jesus on that first night is that he gave those things as symbols, of course, and they were symbols of what would happen soon after that, because you see that very next day Jesus was led to a cross outside Jerusalem, and he was nailed to that cross. And as he was nailed to that cross, the disciples then saw what Jesus was talking about the night before in real time. There he was on the cross, his body broken. There he was on the cross, his blood pouring down. So as we take the bread and the cup, we use it to remember the unimaginable way that God would love each of us and the price that he would pay to rescue us and restore us to him. And as we take the bread and the cup, is in a very physical way, is that we are reminded that Jesus had a body. He had a body, he had a real one. And Jesus' real body, we believe, and along with his real feelings and his real agony, creates a real victory for us. And so as we take communion, let's be mindful of that. And if you're at a place, maybe you're at a place tonight where you're saying, wow, man, I don't know. I've had quite a week, or quite a month, or quite a life. I feel wounded. Well, if you're at a place where you come with your wounds, take heart, because as we understand through the bread and the cup is that Jesus was wounded too. So, are you ready then? So what's going to happen now is the band is going to lead us a song, and then when you're ready, I want to invite you to go ahead and stand up and move to any of the tables that are around the room, and there you'll find the bread and the cup in two forms. One is a form that's a smaller form that's just kind of together, and the other is a form where you've got bread that you can dip into a bowl. You can choose which one that you would like to do, but you can take the bread and the cup together there. So I want to invite you to stand with us and join the band, and let's begin now our communion celebration.
Caught up in your splendor, you invite me in, so I will surrender. You have always been what I was looking for. Lost in you, lost in you. Let my heart rest in what is true, in what is true. Let your love reign over everything I say and do. Let me be found, let me be found, lost in you. Here I am again, surrounded by your glory, the strength I find within your power to restore me. You have always been my shelter from the storm. Let me be found, lost in you, lost in you. Let my heart rest, what is true, what is true. Let your love reign over everything I say and do. Let me be found, let me be found, lost in you. 'Cause only you can satisfy this heart of mine, this heart of mine. Only you can satisfy me. Only you can satisfy this heart of mine, this heart of mine. Only you can satisfy me. Only you can satisfy this heart of mine, this heart of mine. Only you can satisfy me. Only you can satisfy this heart of mine, this heart of mine. Only you can heart of mine. Only you can satisfy. Only you can satisfy this heart of mine, this heart of mine. Only you can satisfy. you. Wherever you go, I know I will follow. I will follow you. Wherever you go, I know I will follow. I will follow you. I will follow you.
Let's go ahead and pray. God, I thank you that when it comes to your character, your nature, there's no guessing. I thank you for the ways you respond to us, the ways you lead us, that as we follow you, as we trust you, as we seek to be people who are just wrapped up in you, God, that you lead us to good things. And so as you offer us acceptance, as you treat us with this love just as we are, you also give us encouragement and strength. Lord, we want to receive that. We want to take that and say yes to you as individuals. And so we do. And we also don't stop there. We look to the gift it is to get to walk within community. And so we say thank you for that. And we also declare that we want to be a community. And we want to be a family that encourages, that forgives, that serves. God, that seeks your lead in every area of our lives and responds to people the way that you did, Jesus. And so we do so, trusting that as we follow you and as we live as Jesus did, that you will take us to good places. We thank you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, you guys can go ahead and have a seat. I want to thank the band, thank Lyle for a great message. Thank you all for being with us this weekend here at Terra Nova. Before we wind down, just a few quick things. First is your Connect card. Be sure to fill that out, especially if it's your first time with us. We want to get you a movie ticket, and so you could fill this guy out. And then for those of us who are part of the Terra Nova community, we get to practice being this family that's a generous community. And so we get to be people who look out for the needs of others, who give sacrificially, who make God's love famous. And so we can give as we are a generous community. You can give using this offering envelope or online or our Terra Nova app. And so what we'll do in just a second is as we head out, anything that you want to leave behind, the Connect card, offering envelope, or even programs to recycle, our guest services teammates are going to have baskets at the doors where they will grab those from you. But remember, next weekend we've got Father's Day, and so we're going to have a lot of fun with that. Come out Saturday night, we're going to have wings and appetizers from Buffalo Wild Wings, and so we got that to look forward to. And then here on Sunday morning, we've got our breakfast outside before both of our services. If you got a dad that's in your life, that's nearby, bring them with, but anybody is going to have a great time next weekend. So be back for that, because we're also going to be jumping in to our third movie in God on Film. So let's have a sneak preview of what we're going to be checking out.
My dad believed in you. I'm not going to make the same mistake.
Someone's not coming back from this.
Those are your pilots. Anything happens to them. You'll never forgive yourself.
No turning back now.
Come on! Jeez!
Having any fun yet?
Nice. So you see, we went with Downton this week and then yeah, makes sense now, right? Well, great. That is next weekend, so come back for that. Bring friends. We'll have movie tickets for you. Have a great week. God bless you all. We'll see you soon.